Hi, my name is Madeline Roach. Today I'm going to talk about gender socialization, especially in adolescence, and some of its positive but mostly negative effects on basically the long-term socialization of humans. I'm also going to talk about the negative effects that gender socialization has on society as a whole, some of the things that it does lead to and play into, and all of that good, bad stuff. So we're going to get started. First, I want to talk about a couple theories that we've covered in class through our book. So the cognitive development theory kind of tells us that as kids grow up, or as children grow up, they're introduced basically to different ideas about gender. Obviously, in growing up, you're introduced to certain behaviors that are for one gender or for the other. For the most part, children are also introduced into a cisgender society, so they're not really typically in this era, they're not really encouraged to explore gender as a scale yet. We're hoping to work on that, but of course, as of right now, that is not the reality that we have. So in gender typing, which is part of what happens through gender socialization and specifically talked about in the cognitive development theory, so in gender typing, it's a way for kids or young adolescents to basically distinguish, which actions, which behaviors are going to be right for one gender and right for the other, and not for the one that they are identifying with, that kind of thing. So it's really sort of their way of interacting with and experiencing different actions, kind of seeing what's right and what's wrong for who they're becoming, they are starting to identify as. I will mention that a lot of, gender typing is influenced by society, by media a lot of the times. So the cognitive development theory does recognize that children have their own ability to think, to accept what they will or will not, regarding gender scripts and that kind of thing that they are exposed to so frequently. One final thing also is that there are a couple different stages throughout the cognitive development theory. The three stages that we have here in our book are gender stability, gender constancy, and then gender congruency. Again, these are all just ways of children, discovering themselves, sort of establishing their gender, choosing which scripts and that kind of thing, and which roles, norms, whatever have you, they will choose or choose not to kind of identify with. So, gender roles are the notions that certain actions and beliefs belong to certain, specific genders, depending on the level of masculinity or femininity that is associated with that action. It's basically a way for telling people which actions and behaviors are acceptable and appropriate for their specific gender and which are not. Gender roles are created from the time someone is born. Like I said, regarding the cognitive development theory, they are fed to, they're exposed to these young adolescents, young children immediately, without even realizing it, without even recognizing it. There are gender role showcases or examples in things that we would find as innocent as toys or Disney movies. If you Google a baby girl's toy, the first thing that will pop up is probably a doll or a kitchen set. Whereas if you Google a baby boy toy, the first thing that will pop up is a car or a tool of some kind. So that being said, there is a clear difference in the gender socialization that happens from that very young age. So I came across a lecture on gender roles, a woman defending gender roles and their purpose and their position validity in society. Not that they don't exist, but that they are not negative. So this guest lecture was from Simon Fraser University in Canada. This guest speaker, Karen Strogan, she was an anti-feminist men's rights advocate who spoke about toxic femininity in her lecture. One specific quote from her that really stood out to me was, she says, "The basis of traditional gender roles was always one of complementarism, not competition. Division of labor and roles was considered considered an essential part of marriage, as much so as it would be considered an essential part of a football team. Now, I have several different issues with what she is saying here. First off, that it is about complementarianism and not competition. To me, the implication that these gender roles are not oppressive to one group or the other is quite ridiculous. If you open up a textbook, you can see that gender has never been, there's never been real gender equality. These gender roles that have been set up, while they have changed and while there have been a lot of movements to change these gender roles, fight for women's rights and all of that kind of thing, they are still, very prevalent and very oppressive towards women. Now, back to the gender socialization of children and how this affects gender roles and how gender roles affect them. So, first I want to talk about child entertainment, so child media. I recently found a clip from a couple different Disney movies. I had watched them probably 100 times each as I was a child, and I had never noticed that many of these scenes not only include gender roles, but include very oppressive gender roles. So the first clip was from a Mulan movie. All of these men around her in the army were talking about what kind of wives they would like. They would like wives that can cook and clean for them and marvel at their strength and that kind of thing. And when Mulan, of course a woman, says, oh, well, why don't you want a woman for her brains or her intelligence or her courage, they all shrug it off. Those aren't the important things. These men need a woman that's going to take care of them and perform her gender roles and perform her role that she is told to perform by society. A lot of the times, introducing gender roles to children is not taken seriously. It's not taken as something that could actually have any sort of after effect later on in life. But as many of us know, and as the cognitive development theory shows, children are developing their senses of gender and gender roles and gender norms starting at a very, very young age. So all exposure to the gendering of society and gender socialization has an effect, starting, the moment that they're born, the moment that they're exposed to it. So this is really why gender socialization is so prevalent. It's often overlooked and ignored, which is what allows this gendering cycle to continue and to keep happening.